So I am Caroline and I am a mum of three and I live in Swords in Dublin, and I'm the owner of Supercam Sensory Products. I would describe myself as definitely determined, open-minded, and definitely a little bit fearless. Three things. Definitely a knife, a hammock, and chocolates and wine. A rooftop bar in Rome. Definitely to meet up with my girlfriends for a glass of wine and just laugh. So my child is Cameron and he's a boy and he is 10. So Cameron is officially autistic and dyspraxic. I did agree with the diagnosis, yes. I would say the family weren't accepting of the diagnosis, and the reason being is that there's a lot of misconception around autism, and well, I believed until I did my research that children with autism don't show empathy, that they aren't affectionate, and that they aren't social. So everybody was looking at their niece, nephew, grandchild and son and saying, no, there's no way, this is our child doesn't tick any of those boxes. But the spectrum, the diagnosis has been quite broadened, and the fact is Cameron is autistic. So for me, the difficulty with everybody not accepting it was that I spent a lot of energy convincing people that the diagnosis was correct, and then trying to get them to adjust their behaviour in terms of how we mind him, his routine, and how we change the way we deal with him so that we can adapt our environment to his sensory needs, to keep him emotionally regulated and to keep him stable and happy. I remember being told, I remember it was in our house, and even though I remember when the words were said, it hit me, like I remember it hit my stomach, and it wasn't a relief, it was more of a just a pang of dread, I suppose. No, it's a journey. I feel like it's like bereavement. It's like any journey, emotional journey of accepting something in your life that you can't change, or maybe control. So for me, it was definitely a journey. I went from crying every day when I dropped him off from school in my car, of the strain very visible on my face, to the point that people would ask me, was I okay, to this full acceptance now of it, and I just think it's okay and it's funny and we laugh about it in the house, and my kids are really aware of what autism is, and everybody is aware of different neurodiversity because we have a lot of it in our house. Savannah's dyslexic, Isaac has ADHD and dyspraxia, and SPD. So for us, it's become really normal, part of our household. So yes, I'm very accepting of it now, and it's just our normal way of life. So what I find hardest about Cameron's autism is the fact that he finds the school environment difficult to learn in, and that can be, he's shown a reluctance to go in now, and he's a little bit of a fish out of water. Everything's louder, noisier, busier. His anxiety would make things harder, like the subjects are harder. So there's no middle ground for a kind of high functioning autistic child. So you've got your autism units and then your mainstream. And I would say mainstream isn't the most inclusive place for a child with sensory issues. Even though they try really hard, it's definitely not an ideal environment. So that's really difficult, because I know going to school in the morning for him and trying to concentrate for 5 hours and be on his best behaviour is exhausting and very difficult for him. It's very difficult for all children to navigate even just social situations in schools and subjects and all the different difficulties they have. But for a child on the spectrum, it is 10 times harder for them, and that's really difficult for me to send him in the gate knowing that. About 3 years ago. No, I knew he had Asperger's, but the dyspraxia actually was the diagnosis he got first, and that was all new to me, so I had to go look that up. I didn't know anything about that, but it kind of made sense then when I did. Cameron's in mainstream. For Cameron, what triggers a meltdown in school is when something's really hard, like Irish. That can be very stressful for him, and that would definitely trigger a meltdown. He'd become overwhelmed and it could become very emotional. At home, it's transition, so that's the time between activities. So we generally try and use a visual schedule for him, but if we're stopping to do something else, that can be a real bone of contention and a bit of a drama. So Cameron it's rare that he'd get into a point that we can't reason with him, but sometimes we can't, and we have to I generally just bring him to his room and put on his lava lamp and his bubble lamp and kind of create a little kind of den in his bed or his duvet, create like a dark space, and let him listen to a podcast and leave him there for about 45 minutes. And generally he just needs to calm down. Generally if it's a meltdown, it's because it's an overload, some kind of sensory overload for him, and he's tired or something's triggered it. So he just needs to go and be on his own actually and listen to his podcasts and maybe jump around when he's feeling a bit better. And he likes motion, he needs movement. So, or sometimes if it's a mini meltdown, it would just be like, you need to go jump on that trampoline and come back to me and we'll talk about it. So depends on the level of the meltdown. So Cammy needs movement. He must have movement. His body would be in pain if he couldn't move. So in terms of food, we're having issues with kind of wet types of food. So we're trying to work on that at the moment so that doesn't become a bigger issue. I think for me, the most recent eureka moment was when we were driving home one evening and he said to me, "How was your day, Mom?" And I was, really overwhelmed by this little simple sentence. But the fact that he, it's learned behaviour, it meant that everything we'd been teaching him about social expectations, it meant that he knew that he was expected to say to me, "How was my day?" And that was amazing, because that meant there was a possibility for him then to develop and grow friendships and with other people other than close friends and family. Not to try and force Cameron to be like a child who doesn't have autism, to accept that his brain works differently and that he doesn't need to behave in the same way as his peers to be happy. So don't feel I had to change him, and we had to work really hard to teach him how to socialise. That he's really cool happy in his own company with his own passions, and that's enough, and to accept that.